right here, chapter 12, the Drake chapter. Drake was having some family members over and friends over to the bowling alley. I went to the party with my assistant and junior engineer at the time, Teezio.
Teezio is a Grammy award-winning mix engineer who's worked with some of today's biggest artists. Today's video, we're going to be taking a behind-the-scenes look at his home studio and do an exclusive mix breakdown of the hit song Sensational by Chris Brown featuring Davido and Lojay.
What's up guys, it's Teezio. We had George T Music come to the studio right after NAMM. I'm going to show you guys the house, the studio, and then we'll get into the actual studio section where we're going to break down some stuff. But yeah, let's go over here. These are all actually the newer plaques that I've gotten recently. Probably my favorite one, or the biggest one I have so far, is the Lil Nas X Industry Baby, which is this one here, 5X Platinum. One of my favorite mixes, we'll start here, Jack Harlow First Class. This is actually an older record, the Chris Brown record, Privacy. Funny story behind that record, I think we cut that record in 15 minutes. We just had a beat from D.A. Doman, and we were in New York. It was New Year's time, and Chris pulled up the beat and he wrote Privacy within 15 minutes. So that's this plaque here. This one is my first #1 record. That's my second #1 record on Billboard. So yeah, Lil Nas X one was obviously one of the biggest records I've ever had, next to No Guidance. So we got that on the wall, and we got Room for More to continue up here because I got a blank canvas. One of my favorite visual plaques is the Trippie Red one. If you want to go in, you can kind of see it's got like this 3D effect. This one I got with my boy Scott Storch, who had me mix the record after they had done the record. This is my biggest physical plaque and the most expensive one, but this is the Chris Brown Indigo sort of, it's all put together with like Indigo, No Guidance, Undecided, which was the first single from the album, and Don't Check on Me, which was featuring Justin Bieber. So this one's huge. This one's like $2,500, $3,000 for this plaque. So it's fucking massive and really expensive. Danny Lay Easy, which is now I think 3X Platinum. This is my smallest but very powerful plaque up here. This one is tiny, but it is the Freaky Friday song. When Chris walked in the room, Lil Dicky broke down the entire song, the video, exactly how it was gonna go, like word for word. And the record is one of those things where when you hear the record, you don't really understand it, but if you see the video, then you kind of get it because it needs the visual to go with the fact that Chris and Lil Dicky sort of swap bodies. But the way he explained it to Chris was on board right away. He thought it was funny. Then we have the Party song, which was one of the first songs I had done with Chris for the Heartbreak album. Indigo, this is the Billboard #1 for the album. We got #1 on the Billboard 200 and rap and hip hop at the same time. We'll jump right down to this one. This is actually a funny story. So I'm from Argentina, and I like working with artists from Argentina to sort of uplift and help the artists over there from where I'm from. And I don't have any other international plaques except this one right now. I went to Argentina to visit family, and I stopped by their studio and I hung out with them because I hadn't met them in person yet. And they were like, you have to take a plaque with you. It's funny, they gave it to me and I kept on saying like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to walk through the airport with this or get this on the plane, because I didn't want to put it under the plane. So I literally just walked through the airport like this in a backpack. Then we jump into the Billboard #1 Hot 100, Lil Nas X and Jack Harlow, first #1 record on the Billboard 100. Jumping here, we have a song called Questions, which I really loved. It didn't take off as much as it should have, but it was an actual sample from an old record that was like really catchy. I love that. So that's that. Then this is for Jack Harlow and Chris Brown. We did a feature for him. Eric Bellinger, Heartbreak on a Full Moon. This was the first album that I had worked on Chris with, and we went #1 on the Billboard R&B and hip hop album chart. Gunna, when we did Gunna, we went #1 in 3 categories: Billboard 200, top R&B and hip hop, and top rap albums. So that was a big one for me when we did the one album. Jumping down here, Kid Laroi. Jumping here, we have Pills and Automobiles. This record, we literally cut it in like 10 minutes. It was super simple. This song, MILF, was pre-Chris. So this is like years before working with Chris. I did Fergie's second album. I think it was our second ever. It was like the Duchess 2. And the MILF song went gold, so I got the plaque for that. And then of course, Tory Lanez Love Me Now. And this is the second biggest plaque I have, which is Gunna Dollars on My Head featuring Young Thug. And I just love the plaque. It's just so big, and like I love like the mirror type of lettering up there and with the word Gunna. There's actually a funny sign. The guys from Audio Movers got me this, and they were like, when they got acquired by Abbey Road, they were like, they gave me this as a gift. So I keep this here at Studio 2 Abbey Road Studios. And then we enter the studio. I don't have any plaques in the studio. I used to back in the day, and I kind of just, now I have room to put them elsewhere. But I do have my Grammy participation / losing awards up here because we haven't won a Grammy yet, but soon we will. Album of the year for Montero. We lost that one, obviously. Album of the year for her. Jack Harlow last year for First Class. Rap album of the year. And one of my favorite ones is the No Guidance one, which that was nominated it came out in 2019, nominated 2020. This is where everything happens. I moved into this house probably 3 months before I mixed Industry Baby. So Industry Baby was mixed in this room along with First Class and pretty much every record you've heard from 2021 and on until now. So yeah. All right, so now we're gonna jump into the gear. We'll start up top with backup drives. Very important. So this is the backup drive for me. This is Chris's backup drive here, CB backup. So I'll use this because I have another engineer cutting his vocals now. So basically, whenever stuff's sent to me, I back it up on this drive. He also has a backup drive as well. When my backup drives are up here, I just use them every night. When I'm finished, I plug them in, back up the drives just in case something happens. After that, we have the TC electronic meter control, which sort of, as you guys know, gives me the levels of everything and all kinds of cool stuff, the correlation between the phase. Under that, I have my UAD2 satellite, which I also have a, what's it called? The PCI card inside of the computer. So this is just sort of a backup that I have. Sonos. So I really like how this speaker sounds. I use it when I'm kind of maybe having trouble not hearing something maybe in the car. I just want to hear something in vibe. Or I have clients coming over and something's happening here with my assistants and we want to play music. So I have the Sonos box, which is really nice to have. Jumping down into the actual gear. Interface, the Aurora Lynx, which is my favorite interface. I've had that for about 3 years now. Underneath this is the 5057 Orbit summing mixer. So this, as you guys know, has the blue silk, red silk, and the texture knob and my output trim, which when I discuss like sending stuff to mastering, what I'll usually do is I'll back off here on the trim. So right now I'm mixing, so it's just at 0. Below that, the insane McDSP APB box 16. So this gives me 16 mono channels or 8 stereo channels of processing. Jumping over here, we have the Fern Hazelrig Industry VLC preamps, which are incredible. I love using those to like reamp vocals. If I was cutting vocals, I could use them as a preamp. But a lot of times I get vocals sometimes where the vocals like recorded really low. So instead of like gaining it on the track, I'll actually reamp them through the preamps. And above that is the magic box, as I call it, the DW Fern VT5, which is a tube EQ. It's really dope. I have it on all of my mixes. It's just on. This is where I have my Grace box, the M905, which this is the controller for it. And when I want to hear it quickly, I can literally just press this button. It instantly switches over to the rough mix. This is my CO1B. And then I have the Aurora Audio GTP1 preamp and the speakers. PMC 6.2s, which are my favorite speakers. I know Baines has the 8.2s, but he likes like a more robust low-end sound. The thing about my room is since the floors are floated 2.5 feet above the ground, the low end literally just like resonates the whole room. You could hear when I was playing music earlier, that the whole room just fills with bass. And yeah, so these are amazing speakers. I'm thinking of getting another pair in case I want to travel and just like take them with me. So yeah, this is the studio, and let's get into all the sections, which is really important for organizing and moving around the record. This is the Mix 4, which is what ended up on the album. This is the print that essentially I sent to Chris for him to approve. And yeah, so this is the print track, and these are all my buses here. So we got drum bus, which just has God Particle, just doing 28. There's nothing on the limiter happening. This Weiss compressor, which let me just solo out the drums so you guys can see what's going on with that. Okay, cool. So we got this Weiss compressor, which Once I've got all the drums sort of set up and going, I've got 4 dBs of gain, some compression happening, which is what's gonna allow me to have reduced dynamics so I can get louder with the mix. Bass bus, which is here. I usually put this El Mu on there. I don't think I'm using it on this record, but occasionally when I'm feeling that the bass is missing a little bit of saturation, I'll come up here and just gain this up and give it some saturation and pull that saturation knob up. This is one of the plugins from the McDSP APB box. Again, I have these ozones are here just in case I need to do some low end dynamic compression or dynamic EQ compression. So I just have it there in case I need it. If not, it just flows through. My music bus, I don't have anything on it for this song. Occasionally I'll put the track spacer on there, which I'm sure you've heard of the track spacer. That'll sort of just react to the vocals and sort of push down the music as the vocal's going so that things don't mask each other if I'm having that issue. My all effects bus is where like the reverb, the delays, anything that's an effect will flow through here. And you can see my outputs 9 and 10, 11 and 12, 13. That's what's feeding my summing mixer. So the summing mixer is being fed by all these buses, and then the summing mixer is feeding it back to the Neve return here. So 3 and 4 input, and that's what's going then to the mix bus. So coming down, we have the verse leads. I usually separate drums, bass, music, all effects, leads. Hook lead and verse leads go to the same channel in the summing mixer, just because usually those things don't end up on top of each other, and also just the same space. I have this for features. Occasionally if I have a feature that I don't want it to run through the V leads, I can add that to the extra lead, so I just have that inactive. Ad-lib leads, those are important for, especially for Chris that does a lot of ad-libs and stuff like that, that needs to be treated on its own or separated on its own and create separation from the hook and the leads in the summing mixer. Background bus, that's where all the backgrounds go. I have some plugins here inactive that I can use if I'm feeling like, oh, the backgrounds need a little bit of soothe, I can activate that. If the overall backgrounds have a little bit of S-ing that I still need to take care of even after I've done it down where the backgrounds are, I can add that here. And the chicken head. So the chicken head is another APB plugin that I use. I will use this more normally on the leads because that's where usually I need things to sort of squeeze down. The backgrounds I don't usually have an issue, but I do have it there in case I do need to pull it up. This is where my all verb and all delay buses go. So both of these channels feed that all effects channel. The reason why I have the verb and the delay separated is because occasionally clients will ask me, hey, can we get a split out of verb on its own and delays on its own instead of the all effects, which would feed, all the effects would be on one channel. So I have these separated, not because I really need to, but in case clients like, yo, can we get the verb separate? Then I don't have to do the work of creating a new bus. After that, I have these effects, which are like Valhalla, Seventh Heaven, Fab Filter Reverb, the Capital Chamber, the ROM Verb, which I use actually a lot. I love this plugin. I don't know if you guys have seen this from Native Instruments, but it's like this super big, super airy reverb. The Intense Verb, which I don't use that much, but it's still there. And if I need it, I can just go and reinstate it. I don't use that too much because it feels like a little bit too shiny sometimes. Sunset Verb, which apparently I probably won't have either now. Oh no, it's still good. This is from T-Rax. So this is the studio verb, like a little sunset. If I'm doing something funky where I want to get out of the normal Seventh Heaven or Valhalla, I can use that. My standard delays, which I have here. I think I have this clipper on here too. Do I have a clipper on here? Oh no, that's for combination. So let's say I want to add some reverb to my delay. I can put the sunset verb on there. My eighth note delay, well, we'll jump here first. The quarter note delay, I have it on ping pong, just standard, and I have this high pass, low pass thing going where it's not going to interact with the frequency, the high frequencies of the lead vocal too much. I can obviously make adjustments as I'm mixing, but this is kind of my starting place. Same with the H delay. This is the one that I use notoriously on Chris's lead, where you kind of hear like this ping pong, but you like feel it more than you hear it. So I have this, again, a filter at 1.27K and at 247 hertz. So that just gives it like an underwater feeling. And I'll lightly use that on ping pong, and that's what you're hearing kind of left and right. Occasionally I want to get, spicy with it. I'll put a flanger on the delay if I want to create like some texture depth with the delay. So that's there just in case. The Sound Toys Echo Boy, my quarter note. So if I don't want to use my H delay quarter note, I can come down to the Echo Boy and put that in. Doubler effects that I have. This sort of does something similar to what I was talking about earlier, where if I want to create some width within a vocal, this is my setting, which is always turn the direct off and leave the side channels on. I turn off the EQ. Usually this comes like this when you first start it, but I put it to 0 just there. And after that, I follow with a 16th note delay. So that gives me a hard slap back with no center channel. So that'll create some width within a vocal. And these are all just like literally the standard pieces of my effects. I can always add stuff, or I have these like open tracks here where I can add, you know, if they're like, hey, can you do a quarter note triplet delay? I can just throw one on here, set an input. It's already going out my effects bus. And then what do we have here? We got this stereo delay, distorted delay. So this is like a super distorted reverb delay with a quarter note on there. So occasionally I'll use this. I think I made this one time in a session and I really liked it, so I brought it into my mix template. And then I have micro shift, which, as you guys know, this also can create some width within a vocal and some H reverb after that, just to create some distance. And then just a standard doubler. Sometimes I just need a little bit of a doubler if I have like a sound that's in mono and I want to just like give a little information to the sides. I have a roll off here, like starting at 250 and then kind of just gradually rolling off, just because a lot of times when you're creating width, you're not necessarily looking for low end width, you're looking for top end width. So yeah, so that's it for my sort of template that I have. It's really simple, really intuitive. And then we get into all these drums, which for this record, there's a lot of drums. So we'll just press play. So boom, we have the kick. Real simple shit. I mean, like, again, like people have been seeing me do real slight resonant frequency things. This is something that I caught at 157, and then obviously that bulk that's happening here, I'm just toning that down a little bit. All these things are sort of reducing dynamics of the kick so that I'm able to get the song to be really loud. If you let the kick sort of just go crazy, you're never going to get past -10, -11 on the luffs, and you'll never get it approved by the client because the rough is probably bounced really loud.
I have a question.
Yes,
so
tell me.
Can you explain how you're determining what frequencies
so I'll
to take
just
out?
mess
So a
with
lot of
it.
people wonder about this.
Yeah, so I'll just mess with it here so I can hear it. That sort of was like a, let me turn it up. So that was like a weird frequency that I wanted. Let me bypass it. So that's the kick, and then this is with that raise. So I wanted to kind of get that frequency out of the way. And then this one, the reason why I'm turning it down is because, as you can see on the analyzer, this is where that punch is coming. But I need to start to reduce the punch and get it louder, just in general. So and it's really small. I mean, this is half a dB, this is 1 dB of reduction. So these are small little things, and they may not make a difference. Like if I bypass this right now, it's not gonna make a huge difference just on this sound, but over the course of the 808 being put in and other elements being put in, those things start to sort of clash a little bit. Add the snare in, turn it down a little bit. Snare, real light work here. And you can kind of see, like, that's why I love like the analyzers. Here, we'll make it stick. I love the analyzers because you're able to see where problematic frequencies are, but you're also able to confirm with your ears, like, okay, yeah, that's an issue. There's occasionally times, like you can see right here, why didn't I bring this down? Why didn't I bring these down? Those weren't really bothering me. This one for sure, this 519 is definitely an issue. Brought that down just a little bit. If I were to try to completely take away this frequency, I think that it would kind of destroy the sound of the snare, and that low end is coming from there. So I just did like a little half dB, and right here on this frequency I boosted 0.32. So it's like real small work. Here the snare was a little bit bright, so I kind of just toned it down. And these are all small, tiny moves that I'm making as I'm moving. Bongo, which these are like the boring stuff. It's just like a bongo. I added some fab verb to this, which is that fab verb you saw in the effect upstairs, it's really dope because I can just come here and just do, you know, Valhalla and type it in, and boom, it pulls up. It's already part of my template. So boom, there's that. There's this little rise right here, which is what you hear in the thing. So a lot of work here. But you can see where this is an issue already. Like, you're seeing it right there. I'm confirming with my ears, I want to get rid of this. I'm seeing it, I'm hearing it. So I'm sort of toning that down. I got a little bit of the low end out of it because there's bass there as well. And I didn't want there to be any interaction between the rise and the bass. Hi-hats. I added this Omega thing, which I don't know if you guys have ever heard. Krish Audio is really dope. Just to give it like a little bit of saturation, because I felt like the hi-hat was a little bit boring before. Here, again, you can sort of see visually like this is an issue. This is something that's a little bit too high, so I just notched that down a little bit here as well. And then to make up for the fact that I may have gotten rid of a little bit of the top end, I had a little body too, just in case, you know. The hi-hat doesn't have a lot of body, but I didn't want it to be too thin, so I added that. A little bit of soothe, 71%. Really sharp, so it's catching like those individual transients of the frequencies right there. Boom. Compression, fast attack, fast release, almost 2 dB, 2-to-1 ratio there. There's a shaker here. Silica, I love this plugin. I put it on Fury. This is like an in-between for Decapitator. Like, it's not going to go as crazy as Decapitator, but it's still like a nice texture sound, or a nice texture plugin that I can put on sound. Another bongo. It's an Afro song, so there's going to be bongos. This is the perfect example of me just going in and finding one thing, boom, that's an issue, and it was this frequency here. If I were to solo this, that's like really resonant. So notch that down a little bit. Again, if I go down here, kills the sound. So it's like an in-between that I need to figure out. Like, I can tone it down a little bit, but not too much. Open hat. Here, let me open the waveform a little bit so you can see it. So that's sort of like a rise open hat type of thing. I didn't even add compression to it. I just did a little bit of work on the EQ. And I panned it to the right a little bit because, again, I'm trying to create width within the mix, so I'm panning certain things to the right or to the left. Not everything will be able to live down the center along with the bass, the music, and the vocals. Here's this roll, which it's one of my favorite parts of the song. Little bit of dynamic EQ here. And reduce this here as a little bit of that high mids and almost 4K. Pretty wide bell. Cymbal. Again, just getting rid of some of these bad frequencies. And what do we got here? This is the shot, which is sort of like this gunshot type of sound. A little bit of reduction, not too much work. I mean, it doesn't need that much. Almost 2 dBs of reduction on it. What else? Another hat. There tends to be multiple hats in production, not just one. Some supporting hats. The other hat was the main hat. This is more of a supporting hat. Just a little bit of dynamic reduction there, nothing too crazy. This is another hi-hat, which is another background hat. Little futz box. I added a little bit of distortion to it just to actually gained it up as well. So I used distortion to actually gain up the hat because it was really low. These are the great shakers. I think the pan shakers. Yeah, so I have the pan man on this. So this wasn't there when they gave me the record. The pan man wasn't there, and it's just something I created to sort of like create some movement within the mix so stuff's not just so stagnant in the center. I have it on tempo with half note, so every half note it sort of moves across. And you can really hear this in the intro where the shakers are sort of moving left to right. Then we have this perk knock. It almost sounds like a really shitty kick drum, but it's sort of just there to support the other elements. Just a little bit of compression. There wasn't any EQ issues that I heard with this. And it's so low in the mix as well that like sometimes like if it's not really needed, I won't do it. I'm not going to go through and like put plugins on everything just because I think, you know, I have to put a plugin on every single thing. So this just has a little bit of compression, you know, mid ratio, 2.5 almost. And I'm getting probably 3 or 4 dBs of reduction on it. Lo-fi perks. So this is something that I, again, did not come on the mix. I just threw this on there to give it some width. So without the doubler, this is just playing right down the center. And again, we have a lot of, like, look how many drums we have. We have so much drum information that I just put the doubler on there and I was like, fuck it. That went left and right. There's a little bit of phasing that happens with the doubler, but it's such a background thing that you don't really hear it or notice, like, oh my God, there's like some phase issues on it. So that's the doubler in its prime there, not like a drum percussion thing. Getting about 2 dBs of reduction, maybe a little bit more on the compression. Real simple shit. Conga, just a little bit of low-end information that I did a multi-band on. And high tom here, which I probably EQ'd some mid-range frequency. Yep, right here. Well, lower than mid-range, but you can literally see this sound is just like, it's all living in this triangle right here. So I did the opposite effect with the EQ and sort of brought that down. If you kind of let those things live too much, like they'll start to build up. Those resonant frequencies start to build up. So I start to like reduce them a little bit and then sort of let them live. Let's go over here. I think this is the perk loop from the beginning. Yeah, so this is the intro and outro. So it's in the intro and the outro. We're almost done with the drums. Another roll here, another fill. So I think this one goes on top of this fill snare. So that those are them playing together, but this on its own is just like the reverb, I think paralleled squash version of that is this, and they kind of just put that as an effect. I probably squashed, yeah. So I think what I did was I gave it the squash because it had reverb on it already, and I didn't want it to interfere with what I had on the roll up there. So this is like a ton of, I'm doing, I mean, let's get back, let's zoom out of this to 18. Yeah, so I'm doing almost 15 dBs of compression on this, but again, this is like a supporting sound that's supposed to be paralleled underneath the main roll. And then down here I have this clap, which is sort of like this, it's really low in the mix. You can really barely hear it. That's why I probably didn't EQ it. I'm probably getting, yeah, 3 dBs of reduction, pretty low ratio. Impact. This also plays alongside the other impact. Where is it? Well, there's a symbol here. And yeah, so those two impacts sort of play together. And a little ride crash here. With some reduction on the EQ. And I think it's the same sound over here, but it's just in a different part of the song. Yeah, so it's very similar. I just did a little bit of compression. This one's lower in volume than the other one is. Bass. So there's 2 sections of bass. There's the hook and verse 2 bass, which happens here, and then there's the rest of the song is this other bass. So we'll play each one individually. This is the first bass. And this is sort of supporting the kick as it's playing. Let's go up to the kick really quick and solo these two together. Sort of, actually, it's like a response 808 because it doesn't hit with the actual kick, which. So the kick and those bass sort of interact as like a call and response more than just being on top of each other. And then this bass actually plays, the hook bass and the verse 2 bass actually play together. Boom, so that's the 808 and the other bass. What's on there, let me see really quick what I did on the EQ. I just did some reduction on this here. A lot of times I'm getting stuff sounding like pretty good already. Another notch that I did, this time I did it with the neutron, so apparently that was an issue in the mix. And And what else? Lo-fi, I always add a little bit of lo-fi, just 0.1, which is nothing, but in the grand scheme of things, when you hear the difference, it's pretty big. For me, it's like I'm looking under a microscope. MV2, which is just bringing some of those low frequencies up closer to the high frequencies. Compression here, about almost 5 dBs of compression, so it's a pretty dynamic sound. And then I closed it off with this, another 2 dBs of compression. So I'll just take everything off of this. So that's the sound with nothing. It's a lot lower. So those sounds, like, what happens is, like, the demo or the 2-track that the producer sent us is being slammed through an L2 or whatever sort of stuff on their master. So when this sound actually plays on its own with nothing, it sounds like way too crazy. So me, when I get it, I need to make that fit in the box before smashing it with something. So that's why that's sort of the difference with mixing. A lot of these producers, they rely on their master track to sort of control everything and bring everything close together. But what ends up happening is you're not individually treating things, so things are kind of all over the place. With this 808 here, it's a totally different sound. So it's a different EQ that I did on it. And it's really just getting a couple of these like mid-low frequencies and this low here a little bit. Again, lo-fi on 0.1, which I don't know if you guys will be able to hear the difference, but we'll play it really quick. It's just like a little, it's a hair. Add like a little bit of sub to it. It's really small, but to me it makes the difference as I'm then putting on stuff like this, the MB2. Again, bringing the lower stuff closer to the higher stuff and the higher stuff down closer to the lower stuff. A lot of my 808 treatment is very similar. It's like EQ, lo-fi, MV2, Neutron 3, and almost 2 dBs of reduction on this one on the Fab Filter. Jumping into some music stuff. Main element for the song is this sort of chords. This is where the issues were right here. So I was sort of getting those out with the EQ. I love Soothe. It's sort of like this, I call it like the AI compressor. It just knows exactly what to do and when to do it. So this is the Soothe. I left this on 100%. A lot of times you guys will see like I'll lower the percentage, but for this I put it on. I lowered the depth a little bit and it sounded fine. Like if things sound fine, like you shouldn't have to just change it because, oh, I don't usually do 100. I don't want to do that. If it sounds good, just leave it. This is a newer compressor that I use. I really like using this for some reason. It's the Slate Digital FG Gray compressor. And you can see I'm getting a little over 3 dBs of reduction on it. Then I'm hitting it with the C2. I'm doing another 2 dBs of reduction at the most. And the Pro MB, just catching a little bit more of these frequencies right here, which let's solo these out. Some of that resonant stuff that I didn't want to get in the way of other stuff. That there's other music's happening here like this. Shave some low end off just to make room. And then brought down some of this stuff. Pinned it out so it would cut through the mix a little bit more. This is one of those sounds that you want to cut through the mix because they actually make up that rhythm in the song. I would say this is low-key, if not the most important sound of all the sounds in the song. This is the second, if you're counting this as the first.
Do you build around the most important sound in the song?
Yeah, so I'll listen to the demo and figure out like what's driving the record, and besides the vocals from the artist, like what's driving the sound of the beat. And it's usually going to be the main chords, the main music which is the chord one that we just went over. But in this one, because it's like a vocal chop sample and it's got this rhythm like like that stuff, that usually gets put, and I'll mix everything in order of what I feel is the most important. So I'll start with this, then I brought the vocal chop in, And I knew that that was like a huge part of the record, was that, because there's a lot of times where it plays isolated, like in the beginning on this part. Very important part of the sound, and that's part of like being an engineer and understanding like what you need to prioritize versus what you don't need to prioritize. So yeah, there's that. There's this Rhodes that like barely plays in the song. I think it plays like, and that's like, just during those chord changes it plays. Shot folks. So those kind of interact together. It's like a call and response thing. So yeah, just probably like, you can already see this frequency right here was an issue. So I brought that down. What these EQ moves are doing is like taking a sound that maybe has certain resonant frequencies that are like unbalanced with the other frequencies of the sound and sort of bringing them sort of more into balance. So that's what's happening here. If I take this off, you can hear it has like a weird resonant frequency, and now it's taken that away. I shaved out the low end and brought that there. Spectre. So again, people will be like, oh my God, you did 7 dBs of adding, but listen to the sound without it. So that was the sound without this. And now here, it cuts through the mix now, and it's the reason why I had to do 7 is because the sound was so muffled under a filter that they may have had that I had to go +7 on it. But this sounded good. I did it. I didn't want to do a number 7. No one likes to do 7 dBs up on a Spectre, but I had to do it. It sounded great, and I left it. After that, compression, probably doing 5 dBs of compression. Without this, it's probably way too dynamic. And then put it back on. So that just sort of shrinks the dynamics of it so that it'll sit in the mix properly. What's this? A little xylophone. Sounds like a xylophone. I don't know if it actually is, but that's what I called it. So that's sort of interacting with the rest of the song. That's just a supporting element, so it's not something that I'm going to prioritize too much. The song could have lived without that sound and we would have been fine. Unlike the vocal sample, which I feel like the song would have been totally different without this sound. Like it would have just like, this would have been the song without it. And then you add this vocal sample. So that you can already see without that sound, like the song loses a lot of the vibe. Then there's some keys. Those sort of go with these chords here. So these chords, the main ones that I had up top, and these other supporting keys sort of play together. Intro vocal chop. So that's what you hear in the beginning. I didn't compress or anything, I just took away some bad frequencies. It's a pretty low sound, so I didn't feel like I had any issues dynamic-wise. And then we got some guitars here. We got stuff like this. Boom, so that's that. Some plucking down here. Probably just some EQ moves here. You can already see that was an issue for me. Right there, 354, 705. So I brought that down, some compression. And then we got the guitar 3. That's panned to the right, so I have this panner going this way. So I'm moving stuff out of the way as I'm mixing. And then we get to the vocals. This song also features Davido and Lojay, by the way. These are all the vocals. This is an Afro song, so you're not gonna see like the typical 100 tracks of backgrounds from Chris. It's a more simplistic style of music. This is Chris's hook, so we'll solo that.
Sensational. Yeah.
And you can hear that eighth note delay going back and forth.
And I know, I act a fool for you.
And that's sort of giving it width. You don't really necessarily hear as much with all the music playing, but it's there to sort of widen the sound of the vocal. EQ on Chris is like pretty simple. I just notch out frequencies that are bothering me. EQ P1A, that's that 10K thing that I do to give it brightness. This one needed more than usual. Sometimes I'll do 2 dBs depending. 1176, getting like 3 dBs.
What didn't I do for you?
This one is, to be honest, like my carving, like the fab filter one is like my surgical EQ, and then this is sort of like my carving EQ, where I'll lower a lot of that low end stuff here with this, the 2 and 6, and the 5 is doing sort of like the shave off on the end. R-Vokes to push things up. Like I said, I don't really use R-Vokes in this capacity where things are like this. I usually do very little. It'll just push the vocal up a little bit forward. Some soothe. De-essing, which I'm doing 5K to 14K, which is sort of where his S's live. You can see I'm catching those S's there. And then the last is the compression overall. I think, I'm doing up to 4 dBs of reduction, but Chris is recorded so well, and we do such a low ratio on his recordings that even when I'm hitting it at, minus 4 dBs of reduction, the vocal doesn't sound smashed or anything. So there's that. I have my effects sends, which I'm using the 7th Heaven, a blend between the 7th Heaven and the ROM. The 7th Heaven is always more, and the ROM sort of just gives it like that extra air. And here's that 8th note delay, which I'm sending, so it does that ping pong effect. So that's the case for like most of the Chris vocals are all the same, even the verses. Like you'll see like the EQ is pretty similar, same top end that I'm giving it, so it matches. But we'll move over to like Davido, which I think that one needed a lot of work just because of how they had recorded it. Let's hear that soloed out. So yeah, this one needed a lot more work. This is like almost 4 dBs of reduction on these right here. But without it, it takes away that. It gives it a little more heightenedness in the top end. This has a lot less on the 10K boost because his vocals are kind of bright, especially after I took out this stuff here. It heightened the frequencies up here. So I only have 1.5 dB going of 10K, 1176. Something similar, like -3 on the compression, mid attack, slow release, fast release actually. R-Vokes again, just a hair less, just to push it forward. Soothe again, catching anything that I maybe wasn't able to catch with this. The Neutron, which I just skipped over, but that's also sort of shaping it without it. A lot more low in this. So that sort of cleans it up, just because I want all the vocals to cut through the mix as much as possible. And then C2, 3 dBs of reduction, maybe a little more in some spots. And again, a combination of 7th Heaven and the ROM. This has less ROM on it than Chris's, but it's very similar. I want to keep both artists sounding like they're in a very similar space. And then let's see, we got Lojay over here. So this is Lojay's vocal. We'll play it soloed.
Girl, I only need your house address, and if you wanna pull up on my
a lot less work that I had to do with like Chris or Davido on this. Just a couple bad frequencies here.
And if you wanna pull up on my
this has higher than Davido but lower than Chris on the 10K boost. So it just depends on the singer. Every song is always gonna have a little bit of a tweak. Even if I'm using the exact same plugins, they're not going to have the exact same EQ patterns because the key of the song makes a difference. The microphone, the state of that person's voice that day can make all the difference.
Girl, I only need your house
a little more than 3 dBs of reduction on the 1176. some carving, top end boost.
And if you wanna pull up on my tape cassette.
Without this.
Girl, I only need your house address. And if you wanna pull up on my tape cassette.
So it just makes it cut through the mix a lot more. Our vocals again.
Girl, I only need your house address.
Really pushing that vocal to come forward.
Girl, I only need your house address. Girl, I only need your house address. And if you wanna pull up
87% on here. The sharpness isn't that sharp because I'm trying to really catch some of those,
and if you wanna pull up
pockets
on my
with it.
tape
De-esser.
Girl, I only need your house address. And if you wanna pull up
Catching it without it.
Girl, I only need your house address. And if you wanna pull up
with it.
Girl, I only need your house address. And if
So
you
it's just
wanna
kind of toning those S's down a little bit, especially as I'm brightening the vocal with stuff like this and this here. You kind of need to you know, pull yourself back with stuff like a de-esser.
Girl, I only need your house.
And then on the
Girl, I only need your house address.
similar
3.5
dBs of reduction. And that should be the end of the session. Yeah, I mean, we have some backgrounds here from Lojay, which I probably put a similar pattern to his leads. So they're just left and right that I panned left and right just to give it some space out of the center. But that sort of, all these pannings and moving things to the side, sort of what build up to like a wide mix. When I get this stuff, everything's usually just down the middle. Even Chris, like everything's down the middle. I think his backgrounds are usually panned like at 30% on each side, and just for the recording process, so that Chris is able to really hear everything. We keep stuff close to the middle, and then as we're mixing, we start to pull the mix and sort of widen the mix by panning a lot of things. But yeah, so that's the whole mix. We'll just give you a huge pan out here of everything. As we move up, all the vocals. Then this is the demo, which I've said before, like I keep the demo between the vocals and the music, so it's accessible if I want to come up here and loop something or mess with it or find the key because the auto-tune reset. Guitars are always pink, music's always green, bass is brown, and drums are blue. So this is the whole session. It looks like a big session. It is a big session, but these aren't sessions that I'm scared of. I've had a lot worse. I mean, you guys know Lil Nas X session was absolutely a monster. But yeah, so this is the whole session here, and here's the mix that went to Chris. And yeah, thank you guys for coming in and seeing the studio, checking out a breakdown from Chris's 1111. Working on the deluxe right now, so hopefully we'll have some new stuff for you guys soon. Thank you. Thank you for coming to the crib. This is the studio. This used to be the designated smoking area, but I stopped smoking weed. So I don't smoke weed anymore, but it's still a designated smoking area for clients. Yeah. Thank you for coming. Thanks for watching the George T channel, and you're here with Teezio.